What happens if a nation like Denmark chooses to restrict asylum? To deal with the immigration crisis, Denmark found this to be the only solution. However, it comes with a cost, which Denmark seems ready to pay. It's not just Denmark taking this step. Many other European nations are willing to jump on the boat and do the same. So to be prepared for more news about immigration restrictions from all around Europe, you need to know Denmark's story. Let's get started. Immigration to the European Union (EU) has seen a substantial increase over the past few decades, with millions of individuals arriving annually. This surge has been driven by a variety of factors, including conflicts in the Middle East and Africa, economic disparities, and the pursuit of better opportunities and safety. The EU, with its relatively high standards of living and robust social systems, has become a primary destination for many seeking asylum and a new start. Consequently, this influx has placed significant pressure on EU member states to balance humanitarian responsibilities with domestic concerns regarding integration, security, and public resources. While the EU has a plan to implement a cohesive policy framework for handling asylum seekers, member states have often adopted varied approaches. Denmark, in particular, has taken a notably stringent stance on immigration. This approach contrasts sharply with the more open policies of countries like Germany and Sweden. Denmark's policy reflects a broader trend in certain EU countries where public sentiment and political pressures have pushed governments to adopt more restrictive immigration policies. This divergence within the EU on handling immigration and asylum reflects the complex socio-political landscape where different nations weigh national interests against collective European commitments. And what is Denmark's asylum policy? Denmark's asylum policy has become one of the strictest in Europe. The Danish government has pursued a goal of reducing asylum seekers to zero outside the United Nations resettlement system. This approach includes sending asylum seekers back to their countries of origin, including Syria, and processing asylum claims outside Danish territory. In 2020, Denmark saw only 1,500 asylum applications, a 57% decrease from the previous year and the lowest number since the 1990s. This sharp decline is a direct result of the government's rigorous policies and enforcement measures. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and her Social Democrat Party have been at the forefront of these policies. Their stance emphasizes the necessity of maintaining national cohesion and protecting Danish welfare systems from the perceived strains of mass migration. The policies implemented include stringent border controls, rapid deportation processes for rejected asylum seekers, and agreements with third countries to process asylum claims externally. This approach has been both praised and criticized. Supporters argue it maintains social stability and prioritizes resources for those genuinely in need, while critics argue it undermines Denmark's humanitarian obligations and international refugee law. But what made Denmark do this? Denmark holds a significant place in the history of international refugee protection. It was the first country to sign and ratify the UN Refugee Convention in 1951. Demonstrating an early commitment to protecting those fleeing persecution. For decades, Denmark was relatively open to asylum seekers, with policies that reflected its humanitarian values and international responsibilities. However, this openness began to shift in the 1990s as the country experienced the impacts of mass migration and a rise in anti-immigrant sentiment. The 1990s and early 2000s saw increased immigration, partly due to conflicts in the Balkans and later the Middle East. The demographic changes and perceived pressures on social systems led to growing public and political calls for more restrictive policies. Denmark's political landscape began to change, with the rise of parties advocating for stricter immigration controls. This shift marked a significant change in Denmark's approach to asylum and immigration, moving away from the earlier liberal stance to a more controlled and restrictive policy framework. The shift in Denmark's asylum policy has been marked by several significant legislative changes. In 2015, the Danish government introduced temporary protection status, allowing for revocation when conditions in the home countries improved. This change was designed to ensure that protection was only extended for as long as necessary, aligning with the broader aim of minimizing the long-term settlement of asylum seekers. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on immigration issues and policies affecting the global landscape. Let's continue now. In 2016, Another controversial measure was introduced, allowing authorities to confiscate valuables from new arrivals to cover the costs of their stay. This policy was heavily criticized internationally, but was justified by the government as necessary to fund the expenses incurred by asylum seekers. Furthermore, the anti-ghetto laws were introduced to prevent the formation of ethnic enclaves by limiting the concentration of non-Danish populations in certain neighborhoods. These laws aim to promote integration and prevent social isolation of immigrant communities. Additionally, Denmark secured opt-outs from certain EU policies on police and justice through the 1992 Edinburgh Agreement. These opt-outs allowed Denmark to implement more stringent national measures without being fully bound by broader EU directives, reflecting its desire for greater control over domestic immigration and asylum policies. So, what's the recent development in a nutshell? Since the Social Democrats came to power in 2019, Denmark has doubled down on its stringent immigration policies. The government has introduced measures to prevent asylum seekers from entering Denmark, including deporting them to third countries during the processing of their claims. A landmark development was the passage of a law allowing the deportation of asylum seekers outside Europe, which was approved by a parliamentary vote of 70 to 24. This law marks a significant escalation in Denmark's efforts to control its asylum intake and reflects the government's commitment to its zero asylum seeker goal outside the UN system. These policies have drawn significant criticism from international bodies such as the United Nations and the European Commission. Critics argue that such measures undermine the rights of asylum seekers and contravene international humanitarian principles. Despite this, the Danish government remains steadfast, arguing that their approach is necessary for maintaining social order and ensuring that those who are granted asylum are genuinely in need and come through the proper channels. How has the nation and international public responded to that? Domestically, Denmark's stringent asylum policies enjoy broad public support. Many Danes believe these measures are necessary to preserve national security, cultural identity, and the integrity of the welfare state. The political narrative that frames these policies as protective of Danish values and resources resonates with a significant portion of the population, which has led to sustained backing for the government's tough stance on immigration. Internationally, however, Denmark's policies have been met with considerable criticism. Organizations like the UN Committee Against Torture and Human Rights Watch have labeled Denmark's approach as unsafe and discriminatory. These critics argue that deporting asylum seekers to third countries or conflict zones compromises their safety and violates their rights. Furthermore, there are concerns that such policies set a dangerous precedent that could erode international norms regarding the treatment of refugees and asylum seekers. Despite these criticisms, Denmark's government continues to defend its policies, insisting that its strict measures are necessary for the proper functioning of the asylum system and the country's ability to manage its resources effectively. The government emphasizes the importance of the UN resettlement system and thorough vetting processes to ensure that those who are granted asylum are truly in need. And what would be the impact of this decision? Denmark's restrictive asylum policies have garnered attention from other European policymakers. As EU countries grapple with the challenges of irregular migration, Denmark's approach is viewed by some as a potential model for controlling migration flows. The country's policies highlight immediate deportation of rejected asylum seekers, rigorous vetting procedures, and prioritization of native interests, strategies that are seen as effective in maintaining social order and reducing the strain on public services. These policies have also influenced discussions within the EU about the need for more robust and cohesive approaches to handling migration. Denmark's measures, while controversial, demonstrate a potential pathway for other countries looking to tighten their immigration controls. The debate continues on how to balance humanitarian obligations with national interests, and Denmark's experience provides a case study of the complexities of modern immigration policy. The future of European immigration policies may be significantly influenced by Denmark's approach. As the EU faces increasing migration pressures, there is a growing call for policies that prioritize national security and cultural identity while distinguishing between war refugees and economic migrants. Denmark's stringent measures could serve as a blueprint for other countries seeking to control immigration more tightly. This shift towards more restrictive policies highlights the ongoing tension within the EU between collective humanitarian responsibilities and individual national interests. The challenge for the EU will be to develop a cohesive policy framework that addresses the diverse needs and concerns of its member states. Denmark's policies may play a role in shaping this future direction, pushing for a balance that ensures both the protection of refugees and the preservation of social stability within member states. The coming years will be critical in determining how the EU navigates these complex issues and what role Denmark's approach will play in shaping broader European immigration strategies. Do you think Denmark made the right choice? Will that work in Denmark's favor? Will more European nations jump on and do this? Let us know in the comments section. Do you support such a decision? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about, immigration and its impact on societies, economies, and the global political landscape. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.